I think we'll start with, can you make it full? Yeah. So I think as I said, for controlling the cost, which means if you will make your service less costly, you will make it more affordable for the customer. And the various challenges are, how do you reduce the capex, how do you reduce the opex, how do you increase the volumes of what you do, and all these things are done by various let us say options available, and in many ways at various stages of time. A telecom operator may not share his tower in first 2-3 years, but when he believes that he has got the cream of customers, then he will go and share. He may share the infrastructure if the regulator mandates it. So it is a combination of economics as well as let us say how the environment which includes regulation pushes him to do this. So because the name of the game is that how do you remain as a player competitive, and there could be only infrastructure providers or there could be end-to-end infrastructure, end-to-end service providers including infrastructure. So you will find in this that there are some costs, that's okay, some control, some which you can control. So a combination of these costs and of the elements with respect to these let us say 7-8 major points make a telecom service provider's network cost. As I said, at a different point of time, the percentage of these change. For example, interconnection cost was very high in the beginning, but as a percentage of business it reduced because A, the interconnection costs were reduced, B is you have lot of traffic on yourself, because in any telecom network you will find there are 4 kinds of traffic, which is me to me and me to others, right, and others to others and others to me, right. So that is why people challenge in the market to get more share of customers for themselves, because you don't not only earn the revenue on the traffic which you get from originating customer, but you get a revenue as a terminating customer also, apart from the carriage customer. This is only a very simple depiction that why there is or there was a rush for owning more customers, right. So the value of the customer is in terms of what he originates on you, and value of the customer is also what he terminates on your network when he is in your network, because you earn today, let us say 20 paisa on call which you terminate, and what is very, very broadly today the average revenue per minute or revenue per minute is about 40 paisa. So which means you earn 60 paisa on originating calls and 20 paisa on terminating calls, and when you make the average of the two, it becomes 40 paisa. So the contribution in this average is important, because revenue per minute is the most important factor which a service provider today looks at. No more are the days when he was looking at what are the number of customers with him. So you look at your total customers, revenue per minute and cost per minute. The 3 most important factors to define your business, let us say, viability. Because when you multiply revenue per minute with the total customers and minutes of use, you get the total revenue. But like it is important to raise the revenue, it is very important to reduce the cost. And reduce the cost not only comes by volumes, it comes by how good fill factor of your network you have. So all the telecom service providers are in a hyper competitive market today in last 4 or 5 years are looking how to control the costs apart from raising the revenue, and there is no choice. Your profitability depends on that. Yeah, Mohit? There's only one more slide. No. Just go previous. One more. That's it. So this is just an example that that how one can go and share the various network parts, the passive, the telecom infrastructure like the tower, people go and share. Then the active infrastructure sharing is allowed, and of course people go and share the various systems, which means billing system or operation support system. Of course, what is supposed to follow now is being talked spectrum sharing. That means I can have a spectrum on which 3-4 service providers can run on a wholesale basis, either using my electronics or putting their own electronics. Both are possible, and of course, in every philosophy there remains some challenges which have to be met. So it depends on the service provider, what does he want to do, what he has. So, and then he goes on and changes the aim of giving you this only was to say how people are looking to control their costs, right, by sharing. And the regulator also comes and spurs. So it is expected that spectrum sharing will be allowed, which is not allowed today. So can we go to that IT industry? Yeah, go to digital transmission. So I think the next presentation which I want to very quickly run you through is just to say that what digital transformation is going to be around for primarily from a perspective of a service provider. That means the telecom service provider, if he remains in his old mode, so he has a lot of challenges to overcome. So more he prepares himself to address the emerging scenario, more prepared he is, more successful he can be, right? Because the change, as we know, is the only constant in telecom and IT space. Much more than in any other field, right? Every field there is a change. There is a change in our family, the way we were and the way we live now. It is a very natural phenomena. But in the case of the telecom service providers, because when you look at a national perspective, about 5 lakh crores have been cumulatively spent by the telecom service providers over the last, let's say, 20 years or so, right? Very roughly, when you see that there is a million kilometer of optic fiber cable network collectively, out of which 60% is with BSNL and 40% collectively with all private service providers. But the total investment to date on telecom in India would be of that order. It's a huge investment. Some of it on which service providers have taken a return, but for them it is a challenge because what they have invested, some is recovered and some is partly recovered and some is not recovered. So, but they have always be ready to go to the next level of challenges. So, the traditional sources of revenue are really getting squeezed because what we said, intense competition, right? So we as a country in last 10-15 years have learned to see competition, but when we go historically back, say 20 years, we were not used to any competition, whether it is airlines or cars or telecom. In various fields, we were not used to competition, but we have got used to competition now, And even when you go to the TV news channel, I mean, there may be 100 news channels run 24 hours a day, including the local languages, So the competition is getting all pervasive. There are only very few areas like oil and gas, maybe the competition is very controlled, So these strategic challenges which are there for the operators, the more you understand your customer, better you can address, him, because if you don't understand your customer, you cannot. It doesn't matter whether it is a consumer or an enterprise or a wholesale customer, right? You need to understand your customer depending on each part or each type of business, and you need to own. And how do you monetize your resources which you have put, whether it is an optic fiber network or whether it is a radio network or whether it is a transmission network, because you need to be clear how you are going to monetize. And some of it is going to bring you competition. Suppose I go and sell bandwidth to another service provider, so he will run his mobile service. If I give a tower to my competitor as a tenant, so he will run his mobile service. So I need to understand that how in each of this space I compete, co-opt, and then monetize. So this is very, very important. And of course, how you get more from the data traffic. I mean, what are the numbers being talked? India from a space of 10-12% should move to 30-40%. So, but when you move in the data space to the as a revenue share of the total market, what becomes important is the network resource used for getting same revenue may be much more, right? So you need much more network resource for getting same revenue on the data, except for applications where you get the revenue. But when you become only connectivity, you get very little revenue. But when you sell applications like you say for polling or some of those SMS where you get 3 rupees, 2 rupees, so there's a value added SMS. But normal SMS, you hardly make great amount of money, but you give that service to keep the customer with you. And of course, you should be very simple internally as well as externally. Because if you make your operations complicated, the customers don't like it, and your own internal people, find it difficult to make more efficient use of it. And of course, how do you consolidate? Which means that if you have a customer, you may have service 1, 2, 3, whether voice, data, application, or various kind of that is a money transfer, value-added services. How you keep owning that customer and give him more services to get more money from him. Yep. So we can really talk that owning and understanding is only few details of what it is, and I'm sure a lot of it but this is only to give few examples that the digital value chain, is making sort of new combinations, how the value chain you can derive, because how from the consumer you get the maximum value of the offer. For example, if you have a phone which BlackBerry had a service which they kept costly and they did not try to address to grow, but a lot of people in the meantime have come and they have tried through the device and putting the applications on them, they have tried to take a revenue share. So when you see in last 1 or 2 years, the effort is you put more services on the device and you buy the connectivity from the service provider, and the device guy, or let us say device plus the Microsoft or Google, makes more money out of it, whether direct revenue or through advertising which he takes. So that means the whole revenue share from the whole game is shifting away from the operator in this chain of event. And BlackBerry reacted as is the opinion of a lot of players, little late, because it lost a market share where it had a very good hold on those email kind of service which they provided. But if they would have eased a bit or added more services, they would have continued to get more services. So that means you must understand the customer, what its needs, what needs will change, and what the competition will bring, so that you are ready to act before others. So that is very, very important, which in some way is stated here. So it also states that customer loyalty is shifting more from network to devices. That's you will talk more of a Google instead of, let us say, which telecom service provider you are connected to. So it's very important that and for each kind of segment, you need to find the right solution. Of course, as I said, that how you monetize what you have in place, that means what you have in place, you put more and more services, which all of them you may not be expert to develop, you may not provide yourself, so you go with partners to provide more and more services. So either you get, higher revenue, or you get part of the revenue, but speed and timeliness is very, very important. And the ultimate aim is to keep the maximum value of the market share. Right? So that has to be the challenge, and you will find that, as we say, the big cars are gas guzzlers, so is the new applications are data guzzlers, So they need huge data. That is where I said that the telecom service provider slowly becomes more and more connectivity providers. And this will keep on happening because new services will need a lot of data. When you go to video, you need much more data space, whether it is wireline or wireless, it doesn't matter. So you need more space. But of course, the technology is trying to improve constantly. How does it do the compression so that with minimum bandwidth, maximum service is delivered? But still, no doubt, more and more the data space and hence network resources utilized, and we have to keep reminding us that how do we get economic return from the rising data traffic, because what is important is that who gets that part of the revenue, and the challenge in the data space is much more than in the voice space to keep the revenue share, because the regulation is much less control there. As telecom service provider, you have a control. There is a revenue share defined for originating call, carriage call, terminating call. But when you go to the VoIP call, it is either not there or difficult to control, both to manage. So, but you still use the space. So, today you can have a broadband connection and you can have a managed IPPBX, means you can be connected on a closed user group anywhere in the world if the same person has same IP phone on the managed IPPBX platform. All these things are available. So you can have a global office, you can operate from home, you can operate from office, you can operate from your car, but you could have a closed user group. So that means all telecom service providers will lose the revenue which they were getting for these calls, right? At least for the closed user group. So all these activities are happening, and it is not limited to only data service. So service run on the data connectivity. That is important. And I think simplicity is very important, because we have all seen that how the various tariff plans we have gone through, how complicated they are. Not only the user, but even people like me can't understand. So I have to ask somebody that what tariff plan I have got, and So the question is, that is what we are talking to the consumer. But more important is your own systems, processes, so that you can do a faster, let us say, activation, deactivation, or faster fault, repair and all that. So how systems and processes you make play a very important role. If you go back and look what the systems are made 20 years back, and you may find a system that 1 in 1,000 customer is only a defaulter, but you put a system for everybody. So 99.9% customers unnecessarily go through that. But you can make, okay, on some basis, by the past history, you apply this to only 1% customer. So you have benefited 99% customers in one shot. But all your processes on the system then have put less load on your system also. And a lot of us come across that the customer data are not unified, let alone that. And my experience shows, when we had simple things like long distance charging areas, different database have different spellings. So they don't coordinate. You'll find 10 of them are different, and hence they don't match. They come out wrongly or they mismatch, and a lot of time is wasted. The customer data is owned by various business side, the network side, billing side. So they don't match and they are unnecessarily duplicated, triplicated. They cause unnecessary load on the system. They reduce the speed, right? And sometimes they cause contradictions and confusion. So how you simplify, this gives some of the example. Of course, how do you consolidate the value of the customer, and the model, how you go and address your customer is very, there is the traditional not work at all, and people already are talking maybe in year 2 or 3 or when LTE comes full blown. So there may be a service only you pay X amount and do everything free, unlimited. But there may be 2-3 grades of customers to whom you may do this. A lot of people who have talked that they have shortage of 2G frequency, they may go and do customer expansion or service expansion on the 3G frequency, by which the 2G frequency will get freed. The decisions which are taken to move to a new business are not necessarily by the economics of that business, but by the economics of you losing the existing business. That plays such an important role. If some of you have seen some of the reports even before bidding of 3G took place. So 60% of the reason of the bid is not losing 2G existing business, and maybe 40% is only the 3G business. So maybe that 40% is also not proved right till now. So the time will tell when it will prove right. But a lot of bidding was only because you don't want to lose your existing business, and maybe partly it will happen when some of the 2G could move to the 3G frequency as regulator will allow, which will happen, and as you can afford, as the technology moves, the handset becomes better. I think what is important is the operators have to decide how they have to win the battle, and I'm sure they in their own way are understanding, trying to act, but better they understand, faster they understand, well prepared they are to meet these emerging scenarios. It will decide between men and boys, so to say, so that they become winners, So it can happen that the existing winners can lose a lot of ground because of the changes if they are not ready. So I think not that nobody is trying to prepare, but I thought that just to share with you that how fast the data changes. This is done, not required. Something we should. Next. Yeah, that's all. So I thought this is closing remark on this particular slide, where the digital transformation from voice to data and a very uh, you know disruptive scenarios are foreseen, and every operator in its own way either tries to stop, because people go to the regulator to stop it or delay it, or they come out with the positive models uh, and the change of technology. So all the combinations will see, but the future of telecom, when you see collectively, is bright. The only problem is that the networks will keep growing. The cost of networks upgrades will keep coming down, but the revenue growth will sort of slow down or shift to new players, including the people who do device or applications, as compared to the telecom players. And more you do yourself, you can turn out to be costly. Hence, you partner with whom you go and share the revenue. So this phenomena is going to continue in some form, and it comes in various phases. As we say, developed market and developing market. So it applies to the metro cities and the large cities and the semi-urban and rural areas. But it is also true in case of telecom, because the way it is structured, or in computer systems or network systems, it can happen faster deep down, even to the rural areas, right? And we may see in future people will be only providing the rural services. That means some service providers will do only rural, partly because of some regulatory changes, and partly because some subsidies may come from the government, like the broadband. If some of you have been following, there's a broadband sort of policy on the anvil, where government, apart from this 1,000,000 kilometer of optic fiber, is going to put another 3 lakh kilometers of optic fiber. Yeah, whatever is, yeah. So that is going to come around and drive the broadband revolution. So India, while has been good at the voice services or mobile phones for voice, but it has been, uptake has been very slow, even below targets for the broadband services. So the government has recognized this, and possibly in next 2, 3, 5 years, this will see a big revolution. And that is why digital transformation becomes more important, because the broadband services will reach more people. Activities like UID, etc., will drive more and more activity on the broadband networks. And 3G is an early phase of introduction, but the applications which are specific to India, will drive this, like money transfer, and a lot of activity will happen. Mobile banking are going to come around. I think this is only to, it maybe reach what is said in the digital transformation, some of the points. So, but like in telecom, so in IT, because there is a lot of correlation and interworking between the two technologies, but IT has its own space. So, like we are saying that things like cloud processing, etc., will take a very strong shape in the years to come. So, it is at a stage where it has started from a stage of maybe crawling to walking, and then maybe to the running stage, so to say, because in every technology, the uptake of that, is a normal growth, and then maybe like in mobile, it happened like a hockey stick growth, as it is called in the marketing parlance, somewhere from 2003 in India. So some of the changes will come, and what really drives is, of course, the people who develop technology. But the most important factor always remains that how you reduce the cost to the end user and make it convenient to him and the multiple users. So that is where the more databases from will come. So this is based on an IDC report. So it says that there will be a solid IT spending in 2011, half of which, or two-thirds of that, is already over, and this is with respect to a world perspective, right? Not with respect to India. So, despite a lot of economic slowdown, 6% growth in IT spending is a good number, because the GDP growth the world may see maybe about around 3% in 2011. So it will remaining above the GDP growth is always a positive sign, despite the prices falling, right? That is what is very important, because like in telecom, in IT, prices are falling, and that is why people develop new things. And of course, the emerging markets, of which we are a part, play a very important role in this growth. And if maybe emerging markets were to be removed, the overall growth will be almost close to zero or very less. So it says emerging markets will grow at 27% of global IT. So huge push in the emerging market, and the cloud adoption, which I think I mentioned. So what is very important is if IT industry is growing at the rate of 1, the cloud adoption will grow 5 times of that. That shows that the growth rate is far higher. The form and shape of how the data centers would be changing with the change of technology, like things like cloud happening, and mobile explosion will not only keep moving but will explode. What is important is services perspective, because the applications will depend on these. The growth of the applications will depend on IT, development in the IT space. So broadband will keep its, let us say, fast movement. The social expands and consolidates. Are we there? Good. Sorry, I thought it had changed. I was trying to move fast and come more to the conclusion. So I think we talked of the mobility explosion and the broadband changes which will come, or the growth which will come. I mean, what is very, very important is when the word is talking, we are not talking of teras or betas or exas, but we are talking of zetabits of information total at global level. So digital universe of the data will grow from about 2 zettabytes to about maybe 7 zettabytes in about 4 years. So that means it will grow about 50% year on year. So that is a huge growth. So that means the data services will play a very, very important role. Growing at a global level at 50% year on year is a huge growth. I mean, the voice connections will typically grow at about, I think, about 5 to 10% range. A lot of industries will go mobile, as we talked. That is where services like 3G and 4G. So that is where I talked of that our next one. So ultimately the users and the user industries drive this requirement. That means if the malls grow, the connected networks grow, because every mall is serving from a central or a set of central servers. Unlike pop and mom shop, he does everything himself, either manually or on a small computer. Some of them keep today. But all the malls, all the organized retail or financial services or energy or health grow. I mean, today people in the energy space are talking of what is called as smart grids. Smart grids would mean that typically today, some of you must have got used to that from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. free call or whatever, or 2 paisa or 10 paisa. So same way you in future, and some of the countries have started adopting, that you have a differential tariff by time of the day or off seasons, off peak and during peak, so that maybe, while you're driving home, you can switch off your, let us say, AC, or you can heat your, geyser in the night, or your house in the night when the cost is half for the power. Because in the power plant, as compared to the telecom, the fill factor is actually little more important, and I'll try to use a little graphic to say the fill factor point, because it is very, very important. That is why sometimes the telecom service provider says that if this is 0 and this is 24 time of the day, and he says this period, and let us say this is 11 p.m. which is 23:05. So his network is lying idle. So whatever he can earn during this time is bonus for him, right? The same applies in a way for a power plant, that if he was to follow the same time period, and let us say his off periods are something like this. So if he can fill the nectar, so then his plant load factor, which is nothing but for every 20 hours equivalent or 60 hours equivalent of units of power. There is 2, 3, 4, 5% outage for maintenance. If you leave that, since you never produce a power plant always runs based on the actual demand. That means a power plant produces less energy. If it will produce more energy, it will trip. So the system automatically, there is a governor which reduces its generation of steam, whatever you may say. Of course, it is with a lag a bit, but it conserves consumption of the fuel, so to say, which is not done in case of telecom, because that is like airline seat which goes waste. But in the power plant, you save some fuel, let us say, by not reducing it, right? So hence the importance in a country like us, where there is a shortage of power, so we always have power requirement, and we can work at 90% or plus power plant load factor. But economies where there is excess capacity, because they always meet the peak hour demand, in off peak hour they have to produce less, so their plant load factors will be less. But if they can sell in that time more power, hence they will have to put less generating capacity to meet the peak hour load, right? So for them it becomes more cost efficient, because they can produce more power for the same capital expenditure. Capital expenditure is a big phenomena, both in telecom and in power, and you can say this in any way, for anything which we do. I mean, that is what the correlation you can do, whether it is water service, whether it is road, why there is more traffic jam during the peak hour, because you don't make the road network necessary to meet 100% peak hour load. But the same road during the off-peak hour is going free. Suppose the office hours are staggered, or there is an incentive for you to go to office in the night, etc. So the load can be reduced. So it applies to everything in life, for all the services. So the fill factor of a network, whether it is telecom or power, just to take two examples, is very, very important, where you can reduce your cost or you can optimize your cost. Of course, there will be more and more, let us say, capabilities added to the devices. For example, which it says that the TV will also have a internet. I mean, we have seen all that. It goes on constantly, like the camera came in the phone, right? So the email came in the phone, net came in the phone. You get the weather. So the constant applications which will go on. So I leave the floor now open for any questions which you may have.
Now it's very competition. I mean, the telecom industry, and they are reducing the rate. The cost rate is they are reducing the cost rate. So there is heavy loss in industry.
But now they have started increasing. They were reducing, no longer they are reducing. And if you have read a report few days back,
No, sir, there are so many companies are in India, around 7 to 8.
12 to 14 players are there in every circle, yes.
How they will survive after 10 years?
They will not be existent in 10, 15 years in any case. So there will be many changes which will come. One of them will be mergers and acquisitions. But as it happened in only,
Then if you start watching, finally only one telecom industry will be there, right?
that is something what you are suggesting is an unnatural justice to the consumer. Right? So one is never good, which we had all experience with DOT, MTNL or Indian Airlines. So there have to be about, in an Indian phenomena, maybe 4 to 6 players where it will stabilize. But more than that, it is the emergence of a player like a leader. He keeps not only, survives with what it is there, it keeps moving into the new areas. Right? So you'll move into, let us say, 3G, for example. You move into more data services. Somebody will move into the LTE space, but there is no choice that some of the players will close down. So some level of mergers and acquisitions will happen, which government will allow. There is no doubt about it. 14 players cannot survive. Like we are seeing in airlines also, many players, if you go back and look about 15 years since privatization in airlines started, some of you might have heard earlier names, Continental, Modi Luft and all that. So many of them closed. So their regulation was less, but here people are holding on to the licenses because frequency has a value. The time will come, the frequency will also get devalued. I'll just give you an example so that sometimes it is important for you to correlate, and I cannot say many things publicly. But the point here is, when you own, let us say, 5 megahertz frequency, suppose you are operating in Mumbai, and you own 10 megahertz frequency. That doesn't mean at 10 megahertz your capacity is double. Actually, it is more than that. Because when you are trying to, when a customer is trying to make a call, he follows the game theory. Some of you have done MBA and studied game theory in the quantitative analysis. So by the game theory model itself, you are likely to achieve about 2.5 times capacity if you double the spectrum, right? It could be more, I'm just saying hypothetically, but it will more than double. That's all I'm saying. So lot of players have to put more sites because frequency is divided amongst more players, right? So that means if everybody is given 5 megahertz, 14 players, so 70 megahertz is given to 14 players. But if this is given to 10 players, each one of them can have 7 megahertz. So their capacity, each one's capacity A can become more than 1.5 times, or he will need less sites and less capex and less operating cost to operate his network. So, but once you are an operator, you want to stop others from coming in, right? But once you have come in, you are complaining that I'm making a loss. The example is very simple, which you take in real life in India. So suppose you are inside a train coach, you believe the coach is full, there is no more space for people to enter. But people standing on the platform think there is enough space and they still want to enter the coach. Phenomena in a way has happened space, more players have come in because when they were outside, they thought there is enough space to make business. Somebody who has entered as a 12th player is saying in 5 years I'll reach 10% market share, which is by natural logic is impossible, right? Unless mergers and acquisitions happen. Because the total market size, if it is growing, is still to be divided amongst that 100%, between the operating players. And today it is the fittest to survive. People who have taken frequency, they have taken at their own, let us say, decision. It is their own decision. So, but the mergers and acquisition will happen. But to an extent, a little price going up will happen, which some of you saw in the airlines also, especially in the peak season. Right? The regulator will also not like that it should go up too much. So then they will come out with a policy to ease the competition a bit. But I think the tariffs, you can say at least for the voice, are bottomed out. Yep. Feel free to ask questions. Recently, in the European Union, the regulators forced the telecom operators to reduce their roaming charges. We have read about it. I read about it 4 months ago. Legislation which actually interferes with the business practice and the when you go and look back the European, let us say, problems, because I was running the global voice business in Reliance. So when the 3G auctioning came there, like our 3G auctioning, I think about 7-8 years back, so a lot of them bid very high, like our 3G, maybe little more than that. So because they all were wanting that they want to have the hold on the market, because they are all holding, many of them were holding the fixed line and the mobile market, both. So, and they already had seen that mobile market moves fast. So that means they wanted, in that auctioning, where it is to a limited number of players, wanted to own the frequency and that service, which they provide, where they will migrate the fixed line customers or 2G voice customers and acquire new customers and new services. And they went around and had a very high charge for inbound termination. That means if you make a call from India to a fixed line, suppose somewhere in Europe, so you may pay 2 cents a minute or 1.5 cents a minute. But if it is a call to a mobile, you pay 12 cents a minute, right? So that means they became together to the international in calling to tariff it higher. So it gives them two advantages. So they collect more termination charge, and then they also generate more outgoing traffic because incoming traffic has become costly, right? So there is always an impact. I earn more both ways. I have the cake and eat it too. So they try to do it. So various ways the regulators came and asked them to reduce, and of course, in various ways their argument had been that they are trying to fund part of the 3G spectrum acquisition, whatever you may call it. So they were successful, and then they kept higher roaming charges also as part of that. And then a lot of network emerged which are called as home roaming. That means 5 operators like Star Alliance of airlines come together and say within this alliance the roaming charge is nil or lesser. When you go beyond that alliance. So there are 3-4 alliances in Europe. I don't know the latest, but I am talking maybe 4 years back. So those alliances emerged where they called home rates. That means within Europe you go anywhere, you will have the preferred roaming rate. But if you make a call to the other network, so that means when you go and you select your own home roaming partners, so to say, that is why some of the devices give you that option that whom you want to select. Otherwise, you may have to pay higher if you go beyond. I mean, some of you may be aware that if you roam into India, or you roam from India to US, so you pay so heavily, right, for a roaming call. So to such reasons, people come out with their own solutions. Like you can buy a US card sitting here, right? So the necessity is mother of invention. So regulators try to do their part. I mean, the US market has been, the operators have been fighting with respect to some of the things which I said, not now, 5 years back, that how AT&T fights that others cannot use those applications on their network, right? But they only can delay, right? 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the line, the regulator adjudicates and says that they have to allow it. So it happens. This is a phenomena which goes on. It's not only in India that there is a fight with regulators. So people find it easier to fight the government than another private service provider. Okay, that's it. Right. Thanks everybody.